does anyone know the name of this man? Does anyone know? I'm particularly looking at the economics students in the room. Who are the economics students? Hands up, there's a few of you, I know. If you're an economics student and you don't know who this person is, yeah, that's right, you're in trouble. So this individual here, his name is Kenneth Hayne. You just keep on digging, right? Okay. Why is this man important? Well, last year he was responsible for, well actually it's a multi-year process, but he was responsible for this document. It's got a very long and flowery name, but you might know it as the Banking Royal Commission. Now, this kind of followed from like global financial crisis and all this kind of misconduct that was sort of discovered. And this is a big deal. Like this was, whenever a Royal Commission happens, it means like something really bad happened and we've got to work out why this took place, right? So like I said, there's like at least 3 or 4 years, I think, that it actually took to create. I think it's like 1,000 pages long, plus it's huge, it's enormous. I don't know how many people in the world have read the entire thing. I'm sure some of the people who themselves wrote it haven't read the entire thing. But anyway, there's some really important findings in this that are kind of going to unleash the topic that we're going to do for the next 2 weeks until AP4s, right? Now, who's this about, right? Yes, it's about the big banks, right? But it's also, if you look closely at the title, it's not just about banks. It's about, like brokers. It's about all kinds of financial institutions, people who give advice, all that kind of thing. And what did it say about them? Well, it said a lot of things. Obviously, we're not going to unpack like 1,000 pages worth of things. But I just want to point out, I think this will give you the sense of it, right? There were 6 key lessons that Hayne and his team sort of, they're the big summary. They got quoted a lot in the media. Here are the 6 lessons, okay? Now, principles, I should say. I want you to have a look at them quickly. Just scan your eye down them. This was the report's major findings and major kind of recommendations to all the different financial institutions and all that kind of thing. In response to, well, I just want you to think. You can actually infer a lot about what banks and financial institutions were doing if this is the recommendation they were given, or recommendations, right? Why would you have to tell someone, hey, you should really obey the law? Like, what does that imply about what they were doing? They were not obeying the law. When you tell someone, hey, be fair, please, like that, clearly you can infer from that, well, their practices were unfair. Just have a look at this one down the bottom. When acting for another, like when you are a financial institution acting on the behalf of your client, right? You need to act in the best interests of that other. Isn't that a terrible thing to have to say? Like, hey, don't be a jerk. Like, be nice to people. Act in a way that's caring to people, right? Now, when you have a look at all these, and all the different entities who were not doing these things, the big question that at least I had in my mind when this, I think it was like February last year, right, is, well, why were they doing so much bad stuff? Like, why were they taking advantage of people? And why would they, sorry, the answer is because banks, right? Well, actually, maybe that's not that bad of an answer, because the key findings of the report was, like, why were they doing all this stuff? Entities, which are the financial organizations that were being referred to here, they did these things because they could. Like, there was nothing stopping them. Now, you might think, hold on a second. Like, surely there were reasons why people would like kind of push against this, right? And this now gets to the crux of why this topic that we're about to introduce is this topic, right? Entities set the terms which they would deal. Consumers often had little detailed knowledge or understanding. They just didn't know. Like, they were just clouded in all this language and terminology, and they're like, I don't know, I want to borrow money, I want to have an investment, and they didn't really understand any of the nuts and bolts, so they made very, very poor decisions. And this is the way this particular part of the report concludes. There was a marked imbalance, mark this, of power and knowledge between those providing the product or service and those who were acquiring it. And that's what this is really about. Good morning. This topic is about that imbalance and about changing it. It's about giving you power. Now, we've actually been doing this all the way through the course. Maybe you want to pick up your pen at this point, right? We introduce knowledge to you, and sometimes that knowledge seems like, whoa, what is this going to have to do with anything, right? For example, last year and this year, we introduced these topics, right? And we spent a long time on them, and they seemed quite abstract. And like, what's the point of it? Like, yay, I can differentiate this. Yay, I can integrate. But what's the reason why I care about this, right? And we looked at that last term. Like, where did these two things go? Do you remember the topic we did most recently that used these two bits of knowledge? Do you remember? I think it's just like the most recent one that we did. Yeah. It's to do with probability, right? And understanding all of this stuff which operates our world, right? Our world functions on these principles. You need that knowledge to have this kind of power, right? Now, the power we've been talking about just now, and this is going to be the substance of this topic, it's all to do with the financial world. All of these kinds of things, loans, investments, superannuation, all of this, you're looking at that. If you're like me, I did not do, like most of you, I didn't do economics or commerce when I was at school. So a lot of this, I just kind of look at it, it's like a bit of a black box, right? And honestly, that's most of it's most of world society, right? So this is power that can either be held over you, or it's power that you can actually possess if you have the right knowledge. So I want you to have a think for a second, right? This is some of the knowledge that we looked at over the last 12 months and the power that we got from it. I wonder what knowledge you think that we actually have developed over the last year and a half that leads to this power. Any suggestions? Have a think for some past topics that might connect to this. I'll admit, it seems a bit, it's going to come out of left. Oh wow, Sarang. Like, getting it in one is impressive. Or maybe you're like, well, I've been looking at my syllabus and these are the only things we have left, right? Series and sequences we covered at the end of last year, but we did it in fairly abstract terms. We're like, oh, here's a sequence of numbers, right? It's arithmetic, it's geometric, whatever, and then you like find out the total or find out this term, whatever. What we're going to do now is we're going to make it very concrete for you. We're going to look at series and sequences in financial situations. That's actually the name of the topic. It's modeling financial situations. So, it was a while ago we did this topic. For that reason, I'd like you to make this heading. And we're going to get our heads back into this space